Welcome everyone to talk about things in life. Let's get started. Because I'm a dork, I'm starting this with a program. So I'm going to run the program that I made, and then it should start this presentation that I made just for you guys. Here we go. So welcome to the most pretentious title that I possibly could produce for a YouTube video, but lately those seem to be working. So a lot of people ask me, a lot of people that I know, when they ask me what I do for a living or in general from this channel and so forth, ask me how do you get started being a programmer? And people that have been doing this for a long time ask me, how do you excel in your career as a software developer? There's a lot of people coming into this field, and the real question at hand here is, how does one succeed in this career in a way to set themselves apart from the mass majority of other developers in the industry? The topics I'm about to go over today are pretty simple. They're all interconnected. They all play into each other. They are independent of gender, race, or anything you possibly could think of that would distinguish a person. Anybody can follow these rules or principles, and I think a lot of people should. This is just my opinion. I started this channel a while back because I felt like I had rather unpopular, or maybe even better said, uncommon opinions in the software engineering field. And I think this video is going to be an extension to that, at least in some aspects, because I don't know if these are the kind of common tips that you might get if you wanted to become a good programmer, or a programmer that feels like they have mobility in their career. They feel like the career's in their own hands, and they're not at the mercy of some boss, and oh God, if I get fired, what am I going to do? And I have to pander. You want to be in control of your own career. I actually think a lot of these principles span across other fields of study, not just programming, but because I'm a programmer, I'm always going to come from that perspective. So again, this is just my opinion. If you disagree with it, that's cool, but I've done pretty well following these principles my whole life. I feel pretty good in my career. I don't think it could be much better. I feel like I have a lot of freedom, and I want to impart this. And a lot of people ask me this, and I end up saying this all the time, usually with beers in my hand, drunk in the bar. And I want to get these thoughts in a place where I can just point people to this video and say, you know what, this is my core belief in my career as a programmer. None of these are ranked in order of importance, but I will say this one's probably the most important one. Being persistent. I think a lot of people in the field of programming, especially in the beginning, or even just throughout their entire career, they just give up. They're not persistent. They believe in their heart that they cannot understand these things, and for that reason they stop trying to understand them, and then they give up, and they have this self-limiting belief that they're dumb or they're stupid. I'll never be able to learn how to code, or I might be able to get by, but I'll never be as smart as that guy over in that department that did this amazing thing. It's always outside of my ability. I understand what my limits are, and that's bullshit. I don't think there's a such thing as smart people. I think there's a such thing as persistent people that don't give up. And I think in the field of programming, you have to be a little bit tolerant to some kind of abuse. And I don't mean from people, I mean from the technology itself. This shit is not easy to learn. I know people that still struggle with pointers to this day, and they hate them, and they'll never try to learn them because pointers are hard, right? If you keep trying, our human brains have been wired over evolution for like thousands of years to eventually understand something. If you keep spending time on it, you will figure it out. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that. They're afraid that, oh, maybe I will, maybe I'm not dumb, maybe I actually can get this concept. And there's so many examples. There are so many things I thought I'd never be able to understand. Matrix multiplication when I was 17 years old, I thought that was beyond me. I never thought I'd understand that. Quaternion mathematics. How to do 3D graphics in general, how to deal with scalability on a server, how to write my own backend, how to program on embedded devices that have extreme limitations on both energy and their computational ability, how to optimize the crap out of something so that if somebody hires you for a job and say, this damn thing's too slow, can you speed it up? You can say, you know what, give me enough time, I'll freaking do it. And that kind of confidence is really lacking in this field. There are some people that have insecurities professionally You have to push those down into the pit of your stomach and say, you know what? I will get this. I don't care how long it takes me. And eventually, if you put that time in and you keep doing that, the next time that problem comes around, you will solve it in record time and you will look like a rock star to everybody in your field. I can't stress enough, you got to be persistent. You cannot give up. That's really important. And I think if you guys are ever feeling like you're dumb and you can't be a programmer, if you have the passion and you want it bad enough, you can. You can figure out just about anything. Human brain's really resilient. The second one is one that's not a very popular opinion among people that ask me this, but it's true. You got to put in the time. And I do not mean you got to put in extra hours at work, and I do not mean that you need to... I basically mean put in your own time. A lot of people think it's sacrilege to be programming and not being paid for every single time they spend on their career. Or outside of school, right? You go to class and then you leave class, and then what do you do in your free time? You get shit-faced with your friends and drink or watch a lot of TV. I think TV is a big time vampire, and I'm guilty of it too. But I think you should be spending time coding on your own, and I think you should be spending time coding without feeling like there's an immediate reward coming. You're never going to be a good developer or really good at anything that you want to do if you're not putting in time and expecting that time to be paid for in the beginning. No one's going to pay for somebody who's bad at what they do. You're not going to make good money. And if you only are working while you're doing that little shift of 8 hours or 4 hours in class at school, you're not going to learn much. You're going to be just the same level as everybody else. And you can't rise above the competition if you're not putting in that extra work. It's just how it is. I know before I got to college, I spent countless hours, probably more than 40 a week, because I was crazy back then. Just always coding, always coming up with something, always something I wanted to work on. And it was just this drive that I had, this persistence to always be coding. And you cannot, you cannot not get better at what you're doing. You will get better at what you're doing if you're putting in the time. And I don't think you're going to get very advanced in your career if you aren't doing that. And there are some people that do this different ways. Some people love to be the weekend warriors, putting in 80 hours a week at their job, but you're very pigeonholed in that regard. You can't, if you want to work on something that's unrelated to what your job is, you could actually piss your boss off because they'll say, well, what are we paying you to do? You're working on OpenGL and your job is a database administrator. You can't really explain that. So taking your career into your own hands and being the master of your own career, you're going to have to put in time on your own time to do it. Great, there's a car alarm out there screwing up my presentation. Oh, fuck that. Number 3 ties into number 2, or number 2 segues into 3. You should aim high, you should fail often, and you should create a portfolio. And basically what I mean here is, back when I used to have to interview people, which wasn't that fun, one of the things that impressed me more than anything else, regardless of the person's background or whatever, was that they had a portfolio or they created something really freaking cool and that they did it on their own. I should add a stipulation here to number 3. Don't say that you were on a team of 10 people that made something. Make something on your own and make something extremely impressive and aim high. Try to create something you never think you'd be capable of. Something like a whole first level of a Mario game if you've never coded before, if that's what you're interested in. It needs to be something you want. Or an entire Windows application that has menus and you can click on it and it does crazy things. If there's something you think you can make professionally and you don't think you can make it, dive on into it and see what the hell happens. See where you fail. See what you think is not attainable, and then go back to number 1 and be persistent and do it. Figure it out. Figure out how to make it. And once you've created that finished product and you've made it available for download, or maybe you sell it on an app store, there's no better feeling of saying, I made this ridiculous thing completely on my own. And it's something I want. It's something I found useful. You guys probably saw on this channel, I created a little tool called Espresso C, and I have that on the App Store. It's free now, by the way. It doesn't cost money anymore. I made that for myself because it pisses me off every time I want to go into... I'm programming and I want to do a little snippet and run it in C. There's no JavaScript console equivalent of that. I don't want to ramble here, but basically I made that tool and I use it all the time for myself, and I'm proud of it. I didn't think I would learn how to wrap a compiler library into a program and then package it off so you can type in code and hit run and it'll run it. That's really cool. And I felt really proud of that. And that's something if I go and if I ever want to get a traditional job and go into a job interview, I can show them that, and that'll probably impress somebody. And I made that on my own. I can explain every aspect of how it works. There was no team of people I was depending on. That was my product. And you should have at least a small handful of these things. You should have a portfolio, and it should be things that you wanted to make for yourself. And I guarantee you, if you do that, you will, car alarm, you will impress yourself, and you'll just feel really good about it, because again, the name of this game is software engineering. You're supposed to be creating things, and you should be able to create really large systems on your own if you put the time in. Learn organically. This is another really unpopular opinion. When I was in computer science school, there were all these things that were taught. And I kind of felt the same way when I was in high school learning math. I felt like learning math for the sake of learning math was kind of torture. And I thought it was really stupid. Don't get me wrong, some people like to do this, and that's fine. I'm not knocking it. But I didn't really get a kick out of sine and cosine and what they can do in trig in high school or matrix math until I applied it to something like a 3D game where you're shooting a gun and you see the bullet moving, right? I think there's a very practical aspect of computer science that's lost when you take these classes in undergrad. And I think the core problem is these two concepts that everybody feels like you have to know to be good at programming. And you will learn them eventually, but you should learn them organically. And those concepts are algorithms and asymptotic complexity. The big O thing, where people are solving things. What's big O of n? What's big theta? I'm not going to lie, n never gets really large enough unless you're in giant production systems to really make a big difference. And algorithms, learning them for the sake of learning them, if you're like me, you're not motivated. What the hell am I sorting this for? Why am I learning sorting algorithms? Sorting is such a dead horse. It's been beaten. There's never going to be a more efficient sorting algorithm invented, at least not without threads. And they're built into standard libraries across almost all programming paradigms, so I'm not going to fucking learn how to write a sorting algorithm. I think it's stupid. I don't care if this is NP complete or non-polynomial. Is it going to help me make my game? I think Jonathan Blow, which is a famous, he's a well-known game designer and programmer, and he's kind of eccentric and negative. And I don't agree with a lot of things he said, but one thing I agree with that he said that I actually think makes sense is you should not preemptively optimize your code. You're wasting your time, and if time is important to you and you want to respect your own time, you should only optimize parts of your program that are a problem, that are too slow. And when you run a profiler and check to see in your code why it's that slow, then you can optimize that part, and then maybe you can Google an algorithm real quick and just learn organically. Learn as you're doing things on the way to that eventual goal, right, of creating your vision, creating your program. Learn while you're doing that. Don't just pick up a computer science book and read it. That's torturing yourself. No one freaking wants to do that. So that's my theory about algorithms, right, and learning algorithms for the sake of them. And everybody takes to use those and throw them around at schools like Stanford, where they're like, well, I know this algorithm and I'm snooty about it, but it's like, well, what have you made with it? Nothing. It's funny, like, I almost in a way violated this one just now, but I get passionate about snootiness and algorithms. Number 5, I highlighted this word because I think it's really important. You should respect other engineers, coworkers, and their opinions. There is a lot of, insecurity and high and mightiness in our field of computer science. Luckily, I've been able to be lucky enough to get through a lot of my career without encountering a ton of it, but I do encounter it. And it's always from a position of insecurity that people like to knock other engineers and their opinions. Oh, who wrote this code? This is a piece of crap. He didn't know what he was doing when he made this. They should let me rewrite this system because I know what I'm doing. Screw that other guy's code. Everyone's a bad programmer but me, or my opinion's better because whatever reason that's baseless, right? You need to respect other engineers in this field. You really can't do this all on your own. Even if you're crazy and you try to develop an entire system, you're relying on libraries underneath of it and operating system components above it. Nobody's able to do this all the time. We all get frustrated in this field. But I'm a firm believer in the idea that respect begets respect. You can be one of the best programmers in your entire department, but if nobody likes you, they're going to box you out. You might even actually lose your job because people don't like people, and if people don't like you, they're not going to promote you. If people respect you, then they will respect your opinion, even if it differs from their own. I used to get into these really funny discussions with my coworkers about why I thought C++ and C were faster than JavaScript because they were JS developers and I was a C programmer, and I was kind of an ass about it. But I was able, it was this kind of banter where I respected what they were doing and what they were able to create with it, and they respected my aspect of what I was doing. And I would write examples. And if you're ever going to knock another kind of technology, you better damn well be able to explain to a T why. If you don't like another technology, this goes into a later slide, you might want to learn it so you can at least understand why you might not like it and why you prefer a certain aspect of another technology over top of it. Just broaden your understanding and don't be insecure and knock things without being able to back it up. And if you do knock technology, which is fine, be respectful. That's really important. I can't say that enough, because I think there's a lot of people that just don't have the right level of respect for the other engineers. And if you're negative, then people are not going to want to bring you into their projects, and you're really going to harm your own career advancement. That's a really important one. 5 kind of segues into 6, where you should gain a new perspective. So when I was younger and I thought I was cool, I thought that OpenGL and Linux were the way to go, and Windows was crap, right? And Win32 programming was stupid, and DirectX was bad because of vendor locking. And I still have that opinion to a large extent. But I decided to learn those tools, right? I decided to learn how to do DirectX, and I learned DirectX 12, right? And I decided to learn Mac OS, even though I thought it was dumb, right, when it came time to learn how to do iPhones. And if I hadn't have done that, I would have lost a lot of money that I hadn't earned on the App Store, because I thought, well, Linux was cooler and Mac is stupid, right? Don't be afraid to get a new perspective in your field and come to the dark side, as they say, of whatever thing you think is superior or whatever aspect of coding you're in. Well, I'm a web developer, so I think native is too complicated. Maybe give it a try. Or I'm a native developer and I think web languages are way too slow and therefore useless. Give that a try, right? Node.js is terrible because it doesn't use Apache. Learn Node.js and understand at least why other people think it's a useful system. As you do this, you'll find that you start branching out and you have so many marketable skills that if your field collapses, for example, like the App Store apocalypse where no one can make money on the iOS store anymore, or maybe you're married to Objective-C because Swift came out and you're stuck in your ways and you think it's a bad language, by learning those other things, if a career opportunity opens up in that aspect, you can do that. You're secure, right? You can make your mortgage payments, your house payment, because you're not an idiot and you're not, having these emotional attachments to these technologies that you busted your ass to learn. I'm a big proponent of that. It took me a long time to finally understand number 6. I think everybody eventually gets there. It's just at what point in their career they do. So yeah, don't be afraid to learn new technologies and branch out. You don't want to be one of those people where, well, that's not my job. I wasn't hired to do that. I'm mad because someone asked me to, learn a language I shouldn't have to learn, and that's not my field. People like that don't get employed or stay employed forever. Number 7 is probably, I think it's the last one here. I see this a lot in the field, and it's from all perspectives. When people are not career advancing, they love to make excuses. People might get upset about this. They love to hang on to the reasons why they think their career didn't advance. And I'm not saying they're not valid. I'm definitely not saying that. Some people have been through really hard bullshit things in their career, and I think that's terrible, right? But don't use that as your cross to not advance your career. If you think Joe Schmo is a turd because he's best friends with VP of engineering and he got promoted and you didn't, well, fuck. That should not be the focus of your mind, right? Like, that's a useless place to put energy into, being mad on purpose. You should lead by example, and you should be so good at what you do that while he's off having drinks with the VP and not doing much work, you're putting in so much care and effort into your craft that when you eventually quit this job, you're going to be 2 or 3 times as marketable as him, and guess what? He's probably not going to be friends with the VP as the next job he gets. I'm not saying don't respect him or whatever. I'm saying you need to focus on yourself internally. I feel like there's a lot of people in this field that feel like they're not getting a fair shake. And that's probably true because there's a lot of people out there that are prejudiced against certain things like gender and background. And what I'm saying is you need to consider all that background noise and focus on your craft, because if you keep doing that, you're going to get so good at what you do that it won't matter. marketable skills are marketable skills, period. And there are places out there that would kill for them regardless. When I'm not joking when I said at my old job, I interviewed for like 6 months to try to find developers that understood aspects of our system that were important, like data structures and so forth. And I found so many people out there that just, I feel like, did not put the time in, that would not have been able to help, right? And I'm just saying you should focus internally, and you should not make excuses for your own career advancement or the lack thereof. You should not play the blame game, right? The only person you should really blame is yourself for not trying harder. And I know that's a really hard thing to swallow, and I think that way myself. Like, sometimes I get pissed off that my VR app is not like #1 on the charts, but I'm probably to blame for that, right? I don't have a lot of experience in UX and VR, right? And I wasn't willing to have the balls to put up all my money into marketing to market this thing, because that's a scary thing to do when you're a one-man company. So just try not to blame the world out there for your lack of your success in your career. So these are my guidelines, right? This is basically the creed that I live my professional life by. I don't expect everybody to agree with every single one of them, but I do think if you adopt these into your career and your way of doing things, I think you'll notice some improvements. So that's really all I had to say about that. So goodbye. Wouldn't it be funny if this video didn't record at all?